introduce to you someone that you may not know who's relatively new to our museum, and that is U.S. Marine Corps veteran Dr. Ronal Suich. Ron, stand up. Ron is going to be our guest speaker, and he's going to present 2 mini lectures this afternoon. Both are fascinating topics. You don't want to miss one of his lectures, and I will be introducing him in more detail a little later on. But he is the curator of our museum library. And that sounds like a big title, but the responsibility is even greater, really, because we have more than 1,000 books in that library that he's responsible for ensuring that he takes care of them, that they are available for readership, for people to come and read. And he does a tremendous amount of research for us, and looking for all the time for new artifacts for us as well. So thank you, Ron, for everything you do. Ron, incidentally, is a volunteer. He does all of this on his own time, and we appreciate that. Let me introduce you to 2 of our staff members. These are full-time people who help me run the museum. Kelly Surprise is here. Kelly is our administrative assistant. Kelly, among other things that she does, is the person who manages and coordinates all of the volunteers that we have downstairs. So that's a big job, and she stays busy all the time. And Lori Vullo, where's Lori? There's Lori. Lori's been with the museum, probably you all know her. How many years she's been with the museum, but she's not an artifact yet, so I'll just say that. But Lori is our artifacts administrator, and it's her responsibility to catalog, manage all of the massive amounts of artifacts that come into this museum. She has a committee that assists her with that, all the volunteers who help her sort out the importance of each artifact that comes in, how does it fit into our collections, where should it be placed and shown, and is it duplicate, and if not, if it is, then she helps us perhaps work with other museums to find an article or an artifact that we don't have and that they may want ours, so we can do an exchange. So thank you, Lori, for everything you've done over the many years that you've been with the museum. I also want to make sure that you all know that one of the most important aspects of this museum is our core of volunteers. Those are the gentlemen, the guides, the docents that you encounter every time you enter the museum main floor downstairs. All of these men and women are volunteers. They give their time, they give, more importantly, their experience, their expertise, and they share with you many personal stories that help bring these artifacts to life. So I'd like to ask the volunteers, I know we have a couple, because most of them are working or not on shift yet, but could I ask the volunteers to rise, please? Just stand for us. John, thank you. Excellent. Your name, sir? I'm sorry.
Jim.
Jim. Thank you, Jim. Sorry. Senior moment. Thank you both. Again, I can't express the importance of these volunteers. It's one thing to be looking at a World War II sword, for example. It's another thing to meet someone who either has carried that sword or has a relative that carried that sword, or who knows a personal story about that sword. That makes this museum much more than just a place to go and look at. So we really appreciate our volunteers, and they are critical to what we do. I would also tell you that with every event like this one, we see less and less of our World War II veterans. And we are very, very fortunate today to have a World War II veteran with us. And I'd like for him to stand. Mr. Nick Tassa, could you stand for us, please? And Mr. Tassa, could you just tell us a little bit about where you served during World War II?
Well, I was in the Navy, but I was very fortunate in my age-wise. Like I was in when I was 17, but the war was almost a thank God for Truman. He dropped the bomb. My ship was in the invasion of Okinawa, but I was there for Okinawa and invasion of what they call the occupation of Japan. So I was lucky.
Well, we're lucky to have you here today, and we're very fortunate to have you here in our community. And thank you so much, sir, for your service. We appreciate you.
My duty.
Let me just make a couple remarks today in lieu of Mr. Tassa being here, because I think it brings an important point home for all of us. You know, 76 years ago, the U.S. was attacked by the Japanese. That attack was on Sunday morning, December 7th, 1941, at 7:55 in the morning. With every year that passes, we have experienced less and less of our World War II veterans be able to help commemorate this very, very important day. And with every year that passes, we've experienced less and less of their family members, less and less of their friends, and less of coverage of the media of December 7th and Pearl Harbor Day. It's our responsibility, and here we take that responsibility as a very important part of what we do, to keep and preserve the memories and the lessons learned from that awful day. And as we experience less and less of our veterans being able to be present with us during Pearl Harbor Remembrance Days, it's even that much more important for us to ensure that we carry this message, carry the lessons learned, carry the memory of those who defended democracy that day with us. It is our responsibility, indeed, our obligation as Americans and as patriots, to continue to teach the younger generation of what the greatest generation and other service members of other generations have done to ensure that they can do what they do today. So I thank you very, very much for taking time out of your schedule today to be here, because what you've shown by being here is that you are standing shoulder to shoulder with us to keep that memory alive, the importance of December 7th alive, and particularly now more than ever as we engage in a lot of discussion and a lot of television media about what is happening in the Far East. It's more important than ever for us to remember about those who gave their lives that day and for those who survived. So today we have a cake cutting, and the cake cutting is in part to commemorate and honor those who have fallen that day. But it is also a commemoration of those who survived that day. My father was in the Far East at that time. He was in the Battle of Leyte. Later on, he wasn't in Pearl Harbor. He wasn't involved in the bombing that day. But I have his letters when he wrote home to my mother about his experience. And it was sad. So I thank you. It's hard not to get emotional today. But I thank you all for coming. Also, I'd like to introduce another member of our board of directors, Eugene Geronime. And he has been on the board for a while, and he is a staunch supporter of this museum, and I don't know what we'd do without him. And he is a retired naval captain, naval officer captain. Thank you, Gene, for everything you do.
USS Oklahoma was sunk that day and hit by 9 torpedoes and capsized. Lieutenant Lucas was at home with his family, luckily. He jumped in his car and drove to Pearl Harbor while the battle was still going on, the bombing, but he couldn't get aboard Oklahoma because it was on fire and slowly sinking. My wife Jane was there, very young, a couple years old. I was in Minnesota, 11 years old, so I was not in danger. The Oklahoma capsized. Part of her crew was still aboard. Bombing ended that day, but those people on Oklahoma that survived the capsizing, and there were quite a few, were locked in the hull. People at Pearl Harbor went up and started cutting holes in the bottom of the ship, and they extracted 31 of the crew members. Some did not get out. The capping went on for 3 days, and then silence. 415 sailors died that day, and 14 Marines that were on Oklahoma. The Sword, if it had a story to tell, would relive those minutes, I'm sure. It was recovered in 1943 when the Oklahoma was righted and given back to my father-in-law. He continued in the Navy till the end of the war and beyond. He was captain of the Gardiner's Bay, a seaplane tender in Tokyo Harbor when the war ended. So with that background, I think you'll appreciate why this artifact will be used to cut this cake today. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we're a little early at this moment in Hawaii at Pearl Harbor. They are going to be experiencing having a moment of silence at 7:55 their time, which would be 5 hours our time, 12:55. But I'd like to welcome, please come in. I would like to just, if we would, take a moment of silence right now, if you would, and just think about the service of these wonderful men and women. And if you'll take a moment, and then we'll go ahead and cut the cake. Thank you. God bless her. Okay, so Captain, would you assist me in the cutting of the cake? And we will get cake for everyone. And then I'd like for you to bring your cake back here. We'll get it all sliced up for you. And then what we'd like to do is make a short introduction of our keynote speaker. And I really hope you'll stay for his remarks as well. All right, you ready, sir?
I don't have to get on that.
Are you afraid on your mic? It's going down too fast or